Recently, I read an incredible story about God's promise of the power of united prayer. It comes from Raymond Edman, who was formerly the president of Wheaton College and was a missionary in Ecuador. Now, when he was a new missionary and hadn't been married that long, he became incredibly sick with typhus fever. In fact, he was in the hospital and they were certain he was going to die. In fact, they were so certain he was going to die, his wife took her white wedding dress and dyed it black so she would be ready for the funeral. Beyond that, they planned a funeral and then they bought a coffin, and because they're in the tropical weather, they didn't want to wait long to bury the body, so they planned a funeral service for later that afternoon. They were that certain he was going to die. And he was unconscious, and he couldn't interact with anything going on around him, but all of a sudden, he said he was aware that in the room there was a unique influence, an atmosphere, a presence, and it was moving closer to him like a cloud, and then it surrounded him, and he realized it was the presence of God, the healing, loving power of God, the Shekinah glory of God surrounding him. Well, he didn't die that day, and in fact, 2 weeks later, he came awake and realized that his wife was still there. The baby that they had been expected had been born, and God had healed him. Then they told him the rest of the story. The rest of the story was the very day they told him that he was going to die, and the wife had dyed her wedding dress black, there was a little Bible conference in New England. The people, early in the morning, as they were holding this Bible conference, the moderator said, "I have an incredible burden for a friend of mine who's a missionary in Ecuador. I believe that we need to pray for him right now." So they got on their knees and they began to pray. And as they prayed, they couldn't let go. They had to keep praying. God moved in and they just kept praying for this missionary 3,000 miles away in Ecuador. In fact, people that were at that prayer meeting testify to the fact that they've never been in a prayer meeting like that, where the intercessions and the pleadings flowed out of everybody on their knees. In fact, they went through the lunch hour into the afternoon, and then they all had an incredible sense of peace that God had answered. And he had. Back in Ecuador, Raymond Edman, who was supposed to die that day, was miraculously spared. His life was healed. Reminds me of Matthew chapter 18 and verse 19. It says, "Again I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven."